Good morning. Please welcome Raman Chowdhury.
Hello and good morning. Thank you so much for joining us at 8:30 a.m. I'm sure this has been an absolutely fun, packed RSA for you all, and I hope the next panel does not disappoint. Of course, the man I'm about to introduce doesn't really need much of an introduction, and in fact, he insisted that I just say, look, Ali's coming on stage. So please welcome the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas.
I feel like I'm back at University of California at Berkeley in the 70s. Go Bears.
Well, this audience is extremely excited to hear from you today, especially because yesterday we had the first meeting of the AI Advisory Board. So at a high level, do you want to maybe explain to folks, I think most people are aware of what it is, but in case they don't, maybe explain a little bit about the board, its intention, and also your sentiments from yesterday.
So the board was commissioned by the president in his AI executive order. Raman is a member of it. It is focused on the safe, secure, and responsible implementation of AI in our nation's critical infrastructure. And so the systems and services upon which Americans rely every day. And we have an extraordinary membership on that board, luminaries from technology, from civil society, from civil rights, civil liberties organizations, thought leaders, critical infrastructure owners, and we're looking at how to harness AI to advance the security of critical infrastructure, as well as how to defend critical infrastructure from the malevolent use of AI.
So the focus on critical infrastructure, frankly, is what drew me in, right? And especially because a lot of people use the term dual use when talking about artificial intelligence, and I feel like the overlap with the urgency to think about critical infrastructure is quite significant. So do you have a perspective on how you're thinking about AI specifically as a dual use technology?
So, we heard a robust discussion yesterday about the potential of AI to advance some of our efforts already underway with respect to critical infrastructure. So how can AI be harnessed to advance the cybersecurity? Mm-hmm. And it was just, it's a very interesting discussion on what the definition of safe is. For example, most people now, when they speak of the civil rights, civil liberties implications, categorize that under the responsible use of AI. But what we heard yesterday was an articulation of the fact that the civil liberties, civil rights implications of AI really are part and parcel of safety. We cannot consider the safe implementation of AI to mean a potential perpetuation of implicit bias, for example. So a very theoretical discussion on the one hand, but this board, what really distinguishes this board, in addition to the fact that it's focused on critical infrastructure, is that it is focused on practical application of AI, the propagation of guidelines that have real life implications for the systems and services upon which we rely.
I'm glad to hear that. So I actually asked my LinkedIn audience if they had any questions for you. And of course, my audience is mostly the folks, as you mentioned, civil society, responsible use. And the general theme through all of the responses I got was, well, how are you going to balance the use of artificial intelligence in homeland security, and enabling the security with privacy and a citizen's perceived right or right to privacy? In particular, as you've mentioned, as it relates to implicit bias against communities that are often surveilled more because they're Black or brown or low income.
So, look, what distinguishes our department is we have statutorily created Office of Civil Rights, Civil Liberties, and an Office of Privacy. That same institutionalization of those interests carries over to the board, which is why we have 40% of the membership is from civil society.
Let's talk about the composition of the board, because I have a little bit of a bug to pick with a lot of the media coverage of it, which very much focused on it having some of the most prominent, I mean, there's some heavy hitters in that group. Could you talk a little bit about the composition of the board? Because there seems to be a focus on the tech companies being there, but as you've mentioned, there's more than just the heavy hitters from tech, right?
Well, we have the technology companies. They're the necessary component of this. We do have civil rights, civil liberties organizations. We have thought leaders. We have critical infrastructure owners and operators. We have Northrop Grumman, Occidental Petroleum, Delta Airlines. We have OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, Google, and many others. We have some of the most prominent civil rights leaders in the country: Maya Wiley, Damon Williams, Nicole Turner Lee, Alex Givens. I mean, the representation is broad.
And I honestly, I'll just say personally, I thought the conversation was very honest, right? There did not seem to be a lot of, performing for the crowd in there, because there was no crowd to perform for.
It was a very robust discussion. I don't think there was posturing. I think people put on the table their thoughts about where we need to go, their concerns with respect to where we are going, and how to navigate accordingly.
Are there any themes that you saw coming out of yesterday?
Well, I don't want to get too far ahead, because the conversation is a closed conversation, and we're talking about what we should issue publicly. But our focus yesterday was on first principles that will ground our work. We're going to take those first principles and then really move to what are the respective roles and responsibilities of everyone around the table in terms of safe and secure implementation of AI in critical infrastructure. From those roles and responsibilities, we're going to hopefully issue guidelines, establish guidelines for the safe and secure implementation of AI, and really develop a national plan.
So it's a pretty hands-on board, and I feel like this goes hand in hand with a lot of the push I'm seeing from DHS, for example, the AI Core. I was pretty intrigued to hear about it. I think folks in the audience might be as well. Can you explain the ethos, the idea, the vision behind the AI Core?
So we are very focused on proving that government can be as nimble and dynamic as a private sector entity. We are recruiting talent to achieve that objective. We have had thousands and thousands of applications. We're not going to compete financially, and we're not trying to, but the compensation of working in public service is different than monetary.
Can you talk about that a bit? So interestingly, a lot of folks I know are thinking of leaving tech, and they're interested in government roles. So what would someone like myself say to them? Like, these are the reasons why this might be more rewarding or interesting, even if, as you mentioned, the compensation may or may not be there.
The voice that one has in public service is a voice that is a representative one. And it is representative of millions and millions of people with diverse interests. And the decisions that we make can impact the lives of millions and millions of people. It is an awesome responsibility and an awesome opportunity. And that is true in the technology sphere, in cybersecurity, when looking at AI and its potential, and in every other facet of our work across the diverse range of work we do. Just 2 days ago, I was sent a video by colleagues of a helicopter that is, the passengers are Haitian children who were orphaned in Haiti and are being flown to the United States to meet their adoptive US parents. That is a helicopter full of Haitian children. Take that, which is an incredibly moving video, and take that, the meaning of that, and apply it to different types of work that we do in the department. And that is the type of impact one can have. And so when one is talking about harnessing AI, we harness it in our refugee programs. We harness it to ensure that no one is disenfranchised in our disaster relief processes. We harness it to advance our work in the fight against online child sexual exploitation and abuse. We take an image of a child who was last seen at the age of 7, last seen alive at the age of 7, whose images of exploitation have been published. We use AI to take that photograph of the 7-year-old. It's been 8 years since she was last seen, and extrapolate using AI what that child would look like at the age of 15. And given the precision of that extrapolation, our law enforcement agents were able to identify, find, and rescue that 15-year-old. That is a remarkable thing. And so it speaks of the potential of AI. There's also, if one turns the corner at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, one can see the nefarious use of AI, tragically. But it speaks of the potential of AI as well as the meaning of the work that we do.
Well, let's talk about that as well, because one of the conversations that I've had with a lot of people is using AI both offensively and defensively. Like, as you've mentioned, there's malicious actors out there who will be using AI. How might this AI Corps or how might DHS get better, smarter, more efficient or proficient at using AI for defenses as well as to defend against?
So we are very well underway through our Office of Strategy, Policy, and Plans, through our cybersecurity, through CISA, through our Office of Science and Technology, to develop and advance our defense against the malicious use of AI, as well as to guard against unintended consequences in the use of AI.
That's wonderful. And just going back to the, to some of the announcements you all have made, there are some pilot projects, from what I understand, that have been publicly announced. Can you talk about them a bit?
Sure. So 3 come immediately to mind. One is to take all of our criminal investigative reports of Homeland Security investigations. So one may have a task force that is investigating a narcotics case on the West Coast, and a different group of agents working an international money laundering scheme on the East Coast, and there's no perceived connectivity between the work of the two, but we are now ingesting their criminal investigative reports into a database, and we will be able to use AI to identify connections we otherwise would not be aware of. That's one pilot. We are using AI at FEMA to assist resource-poor, target-rich communities in applying for our grants to make sure that they are not disenfranchised. We are using AI to replace individuals in the training of our refugee corps. And so a refugee officer in training can now actually pose questions to a machine that has been trained to act as a refugee applicant, both substantively and stylistically in how a refugee applicant would answer questions. By stylistically, I mean very often, given people who have gone through trauma, they are reticent to be forthcoming in revealing traumatic experiences, and we've trained the machine to be similarly reticent.
That's fascinating. So one of the concerns and discussions that comes up is the role of open source in all of this. So first, do you see open source as a threat to critical infrastructure? There's 2 camps, right? There's one camp that sees open source as the enabler of malicious actors, another camp that actually sees the open source community as one of the biggest defenders. Where do you lie on this?
Well, I don't believe in these either-or propositions. I mean, some of our greatest advances have downsides, and it's our responsibility to mitigate those downsides. The open source community has been of tremendous value and advantage to our mission. Many of the companies that are around the table and are on our board have exploited open source, and I use that in the best sense of the term, just as we at the Department of Homeland Security have used open source to advance our work. I think it's its value of proposition is quite clear and compelling.
I mean, I'm in that camp. So, you know, and walk us through, what is your vision for AI? Let's say in the next 5 years, where do you want DHS to be? I see you're looking forward to this question.
Well, no, what I would love is for this audience to take a look at DHS in 5 years and say, wow, I cannot believe how they are using AI to advance their mission. That is redefining a perception of government, not as slothful and labyrinthian, but nimble, dynamic, and really pushing the envelope ourselves.
Nimble and dynamic government, I think, is something that a lot of people would be very surprised by. Thank you, audience, for laughing at that one.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised at some of the things that we do.
So again, going back to a lot of tech people being really interested in government. So how does DHS work with other agencies and other branches? And what does that interplay look like? I think for folks on the outside who are in the tech sector, government kind of seems like one big blob of mystery. Can you maybe unpack a little bit the intricacies of different, you had mentioned CISA, for example, at one point.
So I think, I mean, CISA, what Jen Easterly, Nitin, Brandon Wales, what they have done as leaders of CISA has been extraordinary. When you take a look at an agency like that, and CISA, Jen is going to follow, and I don't know if she's going to speak about some of the announcements this morning, really game-changing in terms of cybersecurity. But it's not just in the security advances, whether it's the JCDC, the cybersecurity performance goals, the many, many different things. It's also redefining the community, the security community, the Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative, advancing the public-private partnership as much as they have. And I should say, they are building on the successes of the past. Chris Krebs, an extraordinary leader of CISA, and what he did with the agency really vaulted it and allowed us to build further upon it. The international community in the cyber domain and what CISA has done there. You know, one of the successes in the international domain is, quite frankly, Ukraine's ability to prove its resilience. And that is a function of CISA's work in the international domain, in the CERT-to-CERT environment, and the like, and what CISA did domestically in the Shields Up campaign. And so I think it has redefined the cybersecurity community to be a very inclusive one, not just domestically, but internationally.
Well, and let's talk about the sort of global conversation around artificial intelligence. We have safety institutes popping up all over the world. We have other governments probably taking very similar strategies and tactics to move forward. How do you see your role or DHS's role in the global narrative on AI governance?
So this is something that we spoke about yesterday in the board, the absolute need, and this is not specific or exclusive to AI, I should say. It's true in the cybersecurity reporting regime as well, that is advancing in a compulsory architecture, and that is the dire need for harmonization, the dire need for harmonization of standards, of regulations and the like, and that is a work in progress, very much so.
Oh, and I mean, even what terms we use to refer to what, right? So what is an evaluation of an AI model? I mean, the absolute basics are still actually pretty unclear. And I agree, actually, that was one of my favorite parts of the conversation yesterday, is talking through a little bit about what, as you said, harmonization, in some sense, interoperability might look like. You know, so how does DHS today play with its counterparts around the world, and how might this board and your efforts be used to leverage that?
So I think the board, I mean, we work very closely with our international partners, Five Eyes most especially, but the breadth of our international work is far more expansive than that. I actually think, coming out of the board meeting yesterday, that this board can play a very, very significant role, given its membership, in driving harmonization. And that's one of the things that we're going to want to really explore with the members more extensively in the days to come. And the work of the board is going to be an ongoing one. We're going to meet quarterly, but we're going to converse and work daily.
That was one thing that I found really interesting about the board, that you want output. You want us to do stuff. You don't have to show up and look nice on screen.
There's a lot of thinking going on. We need to couple thinking with doing.
I am very impressed with that. So just in the last few minutes you have, anything that you want to impart to this audience and the people who'll be listening to the replay? I know there's a lot of folks who couldn't make it this morning, and I think they're very eager to hear how DHS is, thinking about AI moving forward, but especially through the responsible use part of it.
I think we've touched upon that, and we perpetuate this in all aspects of our work, that our goals include the advancement of our values. It is not achieving a particular outcome and then thinking about the implications as an afterthought. That is not who we are, nor is it who we want to be. The only thing that I would impart to the audience here is there is a tremendous value in finding meaning in one's work. And it is, I think, a luxury. I think I would posit that most people work to make ends meet and be able to support themselves and their loved ones. To be able to work, to make a living, and also deliver meaning for others and value and have an impact is an extraordinary privilege. And that comes in government service. I'm really a devout believer in that.
That was very beautifully put. Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Raman. Thank you all.